Dancing.
This is the chair dancing in which I speak.
And if we don't do it, we're convinced something will go wrong.
We are convinced. So welcome everyone to episode 17, Pithy Musings. My name is Caroline Berglund. I'm principal of an organization by the name of Talk, and I'm based in the beautiful city of Calgary, which we have frost out this morning. Eva, who are you?
I am Eva van Krugel. I'm with Fervor Leadership Coaching and Consulting. I have the gift of living in the Pacific Northwest in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And back to you, Carolyn.
She says that every time.
Every time I have to.
So we're a podcast that looks at tough, timely, and sometimes taboo topics. We really are on a mission to help humanity be better. So if you're a leader, an entrepreneur, in a position to influence culture in an organization of any size, wherever you are, this podcast is made for you. And we are so excited to introduce our guest because we think his mission is quite similar to ours. So thanks for being here. To our friends, our clients, our community all around the globe. We love hearing the feedback. We get tons of feedback at the completion of each episode. If you're not subscribing, you want to click below. That's how we get to do this. So please do go ahead and subscribe. So with that, over to you, Eva, to introduce our very special guest.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, we are recording live and unedited with select humans we think are some of the wisest on earth who can help humanity to be better through leadership and cultures at work as centers of influence around the globe. So joining us today is Timothy Clark, founder and CEO of Leader Factor, a training and consulting and assessment organization that focuses on leadership and cultural transformation. He's the author of The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. Hello, fabulous book recommend, and developer of the 4 Stages Team Survey and Solutions. Yes, you too can measure psychological safety. Carolyn and I both know because we're both certified in the 4 stages. Tim earned a PhD in social science from Oxford University, is the former 2-time CEO of leading organizations, the likes of Decker, and first-team academic All-American football player at Brigham Young University. He's the author of 5 books and more than 200 articles on various aspects of leadership, culture, and change, such as in Harvard Business Review, I'm going to stop talking soon, Forbes, and Fast Company. He also leads Culture by Design podcast. So Dr. Clark, who told us this morning he prefers to be called Tim, is a sought-after advisor, coach, and facilitator to CEOs and senior leadership teams around the globe and across industries. So Timothy, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been on a podcast where you had to dance to get started.
We think dancing gives the rhythm of life. So there you go.
I'm not a good dancer.
Okay. Either are we.
But I guess it doesn't matter, right?
It's just chair dancing. Yeah.
Right.
So we're trying something new, Tim, with the podcast where we're starting with the top 5 questions for some of the wisest humans on earth. And we consider you to be one of those. We started in our last episode with an individual by the name of Michael Bungay-Stenier, who is a wonderful author and speaker as well. And it really has been inspired, I think, by Marcel Proust, who believed that in answering some questions, you could really get some insight in terms of who a person is. So we've created our own questions. There's only 5, not 30. But
got me worried now.
Oh, no, don't be worried. They're fun. And we'll just see where it goes. But the first question, I guess, is multi-pronged. But do you have a favorite book or podcast that you read or listen to all the time, and for what reason?
You know, I don't. I I listen to podcasts irregularly. I read a lot, always have, but I read widely, and that's my pattern. It's cross-disciplinary. I love biography. I love biography, and then I read a lot of other topics. And so I don't know. I really don't have a favorite book. It's more about what are you reading lately that's getting your attention, because I read for insight. And so that's what I would say. So for example, right now, I'm reading 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari. I like him very much. He's an Israeli historian, teaches at Hebrew University, a very insightful man. And so that's something that I'm reading right now. That's kind of how it is. I've got, what my reading list looks like? The books, I got a stack like, I don't know, it's 6 feet tall of books that I'm trying to get to. Oh, here's the other thing. Well, what is the scarce resource? It's time.
Yeah.
And so as I get older, I realize that I have to read sparingly, and sometimes I skip a lot because I don't have time to absorb everything. So that's another thing that I do. Those are just some habits that I've developed over time. Let me share an insight, though, that's related to this, that I think makes this all important. I had a professor at Oxford that said, the most important thing that you can learn in school is how to learn when you get out of school. And that has stayed with me because that has been confirmed over and over and over. There was no single fact. There was no single principle. There was no single insight or theory that was all important. But that bit of advice, that insight has been true.
Yeah, I talked about this term last time, Tim, and it's a term that I absolutely love. It's encapsulating something of what you're saying. It's autodidact, right? It's the art of self-learning.
Right.
Like you, I think books are wonderful. I have actually a little library downstairs beyond what you see here. And I don't generally finish all of the books like you. I think I just go through them. I did come across.
Yeah, by the way, Caroline, this is funny. You're not morally obligated to finish a book once you start it, even though sometimes we feel that way. I used to feel that way. I have to finish this book because I started it. Yeah. You're under no moral imperative.
Yeah.
Right? So don't worry. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, there's a few that you're not ready to finish or to dive into. You're not mentally there yet, right? Yeah. But I read something this morning that I'd love to get you. You talked about a historian. This is a quote by Theodore Zeldin. And I'm curious, he's also a historian and an author. And he said, when will we make the same breakthroughs in the way we treat each other as we have made in technology? So I think as someone such as yourself that has dug deep into culture and psychological safety, I mean, if you think about the telephone, the light bulb, the TV, the personal computers, GPSs, which I believe was invented primarily for me, and all of those kind of improvements, we don't seem to be doing that on the soft skill sides or how we treat one another. I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Sure. I made a similar statement in my book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. I said, as a species, we seem to be technologically advanced, but sociologically primitive. Yeah. We can't say that we've made cumulative progress over time. And so as I go through different examples in the book, I even ask the question, are we still medieval?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Right? As we live in perpetual conflict and yet we know what we need to do, but we're not doing it. So for example, if we go back to the 4 stages framework, stage 1 is inclusion safety. inclusion safety can only be built on taking humanity as the highest loyalty. So we establish the human family as our highest loyalty, and we subordinate all other differences. Now think about all the differences that we have. We have demographic differences and psychographic differences and cultural attributes, all kinds of differences. These differences are wonderful. The diversity, the variety is wonderful, and it characterizes the human family. But we can't elevate human differences above the human family. If we do that, we sow the seeds of division. And then we're not getting along, and we're inventing junk theories of superiority. We're making claims of superiority that are false. So you're a bundle of demographics, Caroline and Eva, you're a bundle of demographics and psychographics, and so am I. And we're different. And that's a beautiful thing. But if we can just maintain humanity as the highest loyalty, then we have a chance to create and sustain a deeply inclusive environment. It was Frederick Douglass that said, "I know of no rights of race superior to the rights of humanity." So just take out the word race. It's a placeholder. Just take it out and fill in the blank with any human characteristic or difference that you care to name, and just fill that in the blank. And the logic holds true. I know of no rights of blank superior to the rights of humanity. So that is the principle of inclusion. Never heard it really better articulated than that. And so we can see that we stumble with this, don't we? We stumble with this as we look at history. We can see that history is a chronicle of war and conflict and contention. And so how do we get over that? What is it that causes the contention? Differences, and feeling that those differences are somehow more important than membership in the human family. So we see this again.
Well, and I think this is highlighted in the pandemic too, right, Tim? You know, we've been shown some, I know this word is not popular in organizations, but I'll say it. We've been shown some love from our leaders, right? You know, my kid's running in the room. I know that your parent is in palliative care, whatever it is that we're contending with. And my real concern as we are getting back to normal, whatever that means, is that leaders are going back into their old patterns, right? Here's the goals, here's the objectives. And employees are left behind saying, well, wait, you showed me like you cared about me, and now you're going back.
And wasn't that real?
Yeah.
Well, right. And that just shows that, well, a couple of things. First of all, there's a big difference between interaction and connection. They're not the same thing. So think about what we've gone through over the last 2.5 years, where many people, they have all kinds of interactions, and yet they feel detached and disconnected and alone. Well, wait a second. You're interacting all day. Yes, but I'm not connecting. Those are transactional exchanges with other human beings. That's not enough. Humans we are driven to connect. So that's why stage one is inclusion safety, because we have a deep psychological, biological, spiritual, emotional need to connect, be accepted, be appreciated, be valued. And that need never goes away.
I think we've heard you use the language of it's a human right. And this may not be the exact words, but it's a human right to belong.
It is.
And really appreciated that. When you use the language of we're in this perpetual conflict, you've mentioned the first stage, invite you to share the other stages, and curious how those tie into the potential to begin resolving some of that conflict.
Well, going back to stage one for a minute, inclusion safety. Inclusion safety is stage one because if you watch human beings when they come together in a social setting and they're interacting, the first need they try to satisfy is to be included. So just watch. When you're interacting with people, watch their behavior. What need are they trying to satisfy? Number one, to be included, accepted, and belong. That's why it comes first in sequence. Then we go to stage 2, which is learner safety, which means that you feel safe to engage in the learning process and you won't be embarrassed or marginalized or punished in some way. Humans have again, it's a different need. It's a different category of need, but it's there. They have a need to develop and grow and progress. That's a basic human need to grow and develop and learn. So that's stage 2. And then we go to stage 3, which is contributor safety. Contributor safety means you're given an opportunity to create and add value. You have an opportunity to make a meaningful contribution, to make a difference. So you can see between stages 2 and 3, there's a natural relationship. Learning must precede contribution. If you haven't learned anything, you have nothing to contribute. The need to do meaningful work, to have your work matter, to make a difference is incredibly strong. People, they want their work to matter. You just reflect on the Great Resignation. If people are not feeling these needs being satisfied, we just go through them, right? Inclusion, safety. If I don't have that, if I don't have learner safety, if I don't have contributor safety, then it's not surprising that they're going to bounce, and they're going to say, "Look, I can't stay." So, but going back to stage 3, contributor safety, what does it translate into? It translates into an environment that gives me an appropriate level of autonomy and control and role clarity and guidance and support. Those things. That's what it translates into. So I need that. Then finally we go to stage 4, which is challenger safety. This is a fascinating one. It's the culminating stage. It means that you can challenge the status quo without fear of retaliation or retribution or negative consequences. But think about what's on the line when you challenge the status quo. What's at stake? This becomes very frightening for people because when they challenge the status quo, they feel that what's at stake could be their reputation, it could be their personal standing, it could even be their career, their credibility as a person. It doesn't get any higher stakes than that. So people are very careful and reluctant and afraid to do that unless they see that in the environment that behavior is rewarded. So all of this comes back to the fundamental concept of what is psychological safety. Excuse me just a minute. So psychological safety is a culture of rewarded vulnerability. If you take any act of vulnerability that you or I commit, there's going to be a response to that. You can punish it or you can reward it. That's the central mechanism in culture formation, in any culture, on any team. Human interaction by its very nature is a vulnerable activity. Whenever we're interacting, we're engaging in a vulnerable activity. The question is, will we reward each other's vulnerable behavior or will we punish it? Everything turns on that mechanism. Everything. And everything else is secondary. It's all secondary. It's all support. So pretty important stuff, I think.
Pretty important stuff. And I think again, Pithy Musings, it's about the whole human being. But if we think of organizations right now, unless you go through each one of those 4 key steps, pretty hard to innovate or create, right?
Pretty hard. Yeah.
Pretty hard.
Well, think about what innovation requires. innovation means that we are going to change the way that we do things. If we're going to change the way that we do things, we have to challenge the way we do things first. And that's not an easy thing to do. So innovation requires that we have creative abrasion and constructive dissent. Now, here's a concept that I've been researching. This is front and center for me right now. I call it cultural flatness. And cultural flatness means that think about this based on, Caroline, what you just said, to be able to innovate. Cultural flatness means that we who are working together, that we become very agnostic to title and position and authority. And we're able to debate issues on their merits. And so we value ideas and suggestions and points of view on substance, not source. We don't care where it comes from. That is actually, it's irrelevant really almost where it comes from. But so that's cultural flatness. It means that positional power does not get in the way. And there's no what we call authority bias, which overvalues opinions from the top of the hierarchy and undervalues opinions from the bottom of the hierarchy. Because with innovation, what are we trying to do? We're trying to solve problems. We're trying to create new solutions. We're trying to make breakthroughs. And it's a collaborative enterprise. If you really look at innovation and you watch it happen in front of your eyes, what's happening? It's a social process. It's people working together to refine ideas and then go build prototypes and then go test those and then learn what happened, what went well, what didn't go well, iterate, do it again. This is what innovation is. It's a social process. Yeah, once in a while, someone will have a light bulb moment of lone genius where they're in a corner and they think of something. That happens once in a while, but guess what? That's the exception. That's the exception. How does innovation happen every day? Through people that are interacting in a productive way. That's how it happens.
I think both of us have been both Caroline and I have been in organizations that were the spectrum of pretty psychologically safe, where you could have that creative abrasion, where innovation was possible, and it was a pretty good time.
Yeah. And I like the way you say that, Eva. It's a pretty good time.
Yes, a really good time. You could have that dissent and then go grab a beer afterwards.
It's exhilarating.
Yes. Right. And
really
doing
is.
some of the best work of your lives together. You never forget that team. The norm seemed to be, and I think we've talked about this, and Caroline, correct me if I'm wrong, most of our careers have been in environments where those conditions weren't in place. I think it's formed for me, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do today and about the body of work in psychological safety, because the world needs more inclusion and more innovation, which is a bit of a bridge to question number 2 for wise humans on Earth. And that is, what most excites you about the future of humanity in the world and also terrifies you? See what we did there? It's a 2-pronged question.
Again.
That's a tough one. I think what most excites me, though, is the prospect that we could make some significant progress. We've come out of the pandemic. I see evidence that there's more institutional will to change culture, to change the way we do things, to treat each other better, to create deeply inclusive environments. And I see sustainable motivation, the likes of which I have never seen before in my career. So what excites me is, as I said, the prospect that we could really make some gains. and that we're not going to have a regression to the mean. We're not going to fall back to where we are. Why? Because we're just too enlightened.
Yeah.
And we can't go back and fool ourselves anymore. Right?
But
We're not gonna go back and tell ourselves soothing stories about our superiority and all the nonsense that we use to justify a superiority claim. We're not going to do that anymore. Right?
A lot of this is hinged on the soft skills, which Eva likes to say are the hard skills, and I agree with her. So whether it's kindness or empathy or, ethical behavior or resilience, I guess the question is how there might be the motivation out there, but how do you actually convert that into changed behavior?
Right. Because as you say, Caroline, this is so true. We can talk about it conceptually, but it has to go down to the ground, and the ground is behavior. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, with stage 1 inclusion safety, as we've continued to research this, we have identified 10 behavioral families that these behavioral families, if you apply behaviors in these families, they create inclusion as a natural consequence. The first behavioral family is the family of asking, any asking behavior. Another behavioral family is greeting, any greeting behavior that we extend to each other. Another behavioral family is sharing. Another behavioral family is inviting. So when we engage in these behaviors with good faith, in real intent, people can feel it. Now, it's not going to be perfect, and you may be awkward, and you may not be the most skilled person, but humans can smell intent.
Yes.
We have natural equipment to smell intent. And so if you engage in these behaviors from these behavioral families, and you do it consistently, and the clean intent is there, then eventually it creates inclusion as a natural consequence, and it cannot be denied. So to your point, Caroline, it has to go down to behavior. We have to be committed to it. We learn how to do it. We practice it. We're going to make mistakes. But if our hearts are in it, we can do it. And we can take any social collective, any team, any organization, and we can literally shift the prevailing norms on that team. And it is entirely possible to do. It's not easy, but if we stay with it, we can do it. So that's what I'm excited about. What am I worried about? What I'm worried about is that we won't act on what we know to be true now. That there will be this knowing-doing gap that we don't close. Because there's a knowing-doing gap. We know more than we do. And that's always true. But I think we have the opportunity to close that gap more than ever before. And we know what we need to do. We're not. It's one thing when you don't know the answer, mm-hmm. and you're trying to find the answer, and you're searching. That's not the case here. We know what we need to do. We really do, and we know at a behavioral level what we need to do. For example, these behavioral families that I just mentioned. If we can start to apply those and do it consistently, the outcomes, the results, they'll be different.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time, but I hope we can stay with it. That's going to require leaders that model the way, because as we come back to psychological safety and culture formation and transformation, it all hinges on that mechanism of modeling first and then rewarding second, vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to do that. So if you have a leader that doesn't model and reward vulnerability, that leader's not leading.
Yep.
Right? Can we come to any other conclusion? I don't think so.
Well, and that takes a real act of stepping outside one's comfort zone, right? Oh, you're going to ask me to be vulnerable? I often use the example of the iceberg, right? You got the water line. I'm going to show you the mask that's above the water line. But going underneath that, you're showing vulnerability. And a lot of leaders that are in leader positions right now were not promoted because they had that prowess. They were promoted because they were technically, astute at what they do. So it's going to take a real leap to push themselves out of their comfort zone to demonstrate some of that vulnerability.
It is. It's not. We often, as you say, the pattern is that we promote people on the strength of their performance as individual contributors. This is true. That's not all wrong. But if we don't add a requirement that says you need to have a demonstrated track record in creating psychological safety, we need to add that as a requirement. If we don't add that, then the chance of failure is great. We need so it needs to be an evidence-based decision that this person has the ability to lead other human beings. And that's not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable at all. If you don't have that track record, if there's not evidence that you're able to create a culture and an environment and conditions of psychological safety, then okay, fine, keep working on it. You need to work on that. But we can't put you in charge of a team. That would be irresponsible of us to do that, right? You shouldn't be leading humans, at least not yet. You've got work to do.
I love that you're calling that out. And I think that that's a significant opportunity for those who are really committed to move in the direction of increased psychological safety. I think it's a cultural differentiator in organizations. One of the things that I wonder about and I run into a lot in my practice, I suspect, for you too, Caroline, is there are some who really believe in this stuff and want to make change, yet feel or believe that the environment they're in simply doesn't have the conditions that support standing in this work. And so they try to use their voices, share their opinions, start to feel more and more unpopular, increasingly isolated, no matter how senior they may be. And then they go fight or flight or freeze. So what does someone do in a situation like that, where they feel stuck and want to make change?
Sure. Let's talk about the anatomy of culture, maybe, to answer this question. So if you look at a large organization, the organization has an institutional culture at a macro level, right? The whole thing. And then you can step down. You can step down to a line of business, a geography, a functional area, and you'll see subcultures. And they're different. They share certain characteristics with the institutional culture, but they have some of their own based on what they do, based on the leaders and the people that are there. And then you can step down again to the level of a team. And at a team, we call it a microculture. And the team in the 21st century is the basic unit of performance. You don't perform with like the whole function or the whole organization. No. When people are actually interacting and they're a unit, that's a team. It's the basic unit of performance. The microculture is the most profound expression of culture in any organization. Why? Because it has the biggest impact on behavior and performance. So, going back to your question, what do? First, worry about the microculture, because that is the working unit of culture. So worry about that. What can you do? You're already a cultural architect, whether you like it or not, because you're radiating influence every day, and there's no off switch for that. So you have to absorb that. But then the question becomes, how intentional are you about doing that? About shaping the microculture. And so worry about that first. Create a beachhead, create an enclave of psychological safety, of vibrant, healthy, strong culture there. And then think about what you can do beyond that to scale your influence and your impact. That I think that's pretty sound practical advice. Now, you'll run into a dilemma that we often face. If you're not the leader of the team and the team's not doing well, if it's dysfunctional, it may even be toxic.
Mm-hmm.
When you encounter a microculture that's toxic, what that means is one of two things will be true. Number one, the leader is actively toxic. And that means the leader is engaging in toxic behavior on purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's often the case. So the leader's actively toxic. The other option is that the leader is passively complicit. And the leader is allowing other members of the team to engage in toxic behaviors without consequence. Mm-hmm. One of those two things is going to be true. If you have a toxic environment on a team, one of those two things is going to be true. Now, here's what we know based on research. If the leader is actively toxic, there's a very low chance that leader is coachable.
Yeah.
Because the leader's doing it on purpose. The leader understands that they are hurting the team and being destructive. They have a fundamental motivational problem with intent, right? But if the leader is passively complicit, then the leader may be coachable. The leader may not know how to lead the team. The leader may be deferring to others. The leader may be lost and disoriented and confused and discouraged. Okay, we can work with that. Mm. So you have to assess what is the motivational profile of the leader. Mm-hmm. Is there good faith? Is there a real desire to help and lead in the right way? If so, okay, well, there's a good chance we can make some gains here. So I just give you that frame because that's a diagnostic question that we need to ask. Who's leading the team? Where are they coming from? What's their motivation? Right? Before you decide to bounce.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But to your point, Eva, there's less and less tolerance and patience, especially on the part of new employees. You take a look at Gen Zers that are coming into the workforce. They expect a psychologically safe environment as a term of employment. They expect that because they want to thrive and they want to learn and they want to grow and they want to contribute and they want to innovate. They want to do all those things. If they don't get that, especially the most talented, they're going to bounce. Mm-hmm. They're not going to hang around. Because it doesn't even make sense to them. I'm here to contribute. I'm here to grow. And so what are you all doing here? Right. What is this all about?
I love the influence of these needs and wants starting to be expressed and starting to see people make bold moves to live into their values. And they're bouncing for good reason in many cases. Caroline, I have a feeling you have something to say or a question to ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the toxic leadership and the passively, or maybe the ones that are more coachable. I'd be curious, what came to my mind was, I really believe this, Tim, that people show up and they want to be of value and valued. I really believe that. And if they're toxic or actively disengaged, whatever language you want to use, there's a reason behind that. So if you can get to the root of that, perhaps you could turn around some of these toxic leaders, but I'm curious as to your thoughts about that.
You can, but that's going to be hard for team members. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard because positional power is a barrier. And they're often silenced and marginalized, and they just don't, there's no angle for them to come and help. Now, here's one, I will give you one though, that often helps. And that is that if you see a leader struggling this way, try to coach that leader through questions. Sometimes the leader will allow you to work with them in a process of joint discovery. So for example, you say, hey, Caroline, how do you think that meeting went? That team meeting that we just had? Right? So you try to engage them and draw them out. Sometimes they'll take you up on that invitation, and they will allow you to engage in joint discovery with them. And that becomes almost well, it's not a peer coaching relationship because you're actually coaching the boss, but you can do that sometimes. So it depends on the openness and the willingness of that leader, but that's something that often can work. But you have to be able to approach that with real diplomacy and sensitivity. It's not easy, but that's just one way that might work.
I think that's a great suggestion. Let's move on to question 3, shall we? What do you think the future is asking organizations to be and to do differently?
It's asking them to expand their stewardship. And this is not easy. And it's controversial, but it's something that we have to tackle. Because let's just take corporations. Let's take as an example. So if you go back historically, we have what is called the shareholder return theory of the corporation, which means that there's only one reason that you exist, and that reason is shareholder return. That's it. That's it. And many corporations have existed on that theory, the shareholder return theory of the corporation. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. We have other stakeholders, and there are other needs that we need to acknowledge, and our stewardship extends beyond that. But it does get dicey when other stakeholders and other influences try to dictate exactly what you should do and how you should do it. And that's where it gets a little bit difficult and challenging. So I'll just say that the stewardship, I think everybody acknowledges, it's extended, it's broadened, it's bigger, and it's long-term. We have to think long-term about consequences and unintended consequences of what we do in organizations. And I think many organizations are trying to do this. But I think that's the overall, I guess, inflection point that began a while back and continues. I think that I think it's about stewardship. I think it's and where I come in with all of this is just the stewardship that you have to people that are in your organization, the way that you treat them, the way that you esteem them, the way that you regard them, the way that you engage with them. That's what I focus on. And there's so much that we need to do that we haven't been doing.
You're reminding me of the language of opportunities for co-creation and invitational stewardship, where things like, I'm hearing of leaders leaving organizations who say, I'm watching us declare what our purpose is, the C-suite, and not inviting or co-creating with those who the purpose impacts or who make the purpose possible. And those are micro moments or maybe macro moments that present a different stewardship opportunity that transcends the shareholder returns.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and a lot of it goes back to innovation too, because innovation, this is an interesting thing. So we've done employee surveys in many organizations, and we've asked employees, hey, is innovation part of your job? And in some cases, more than half of employees say, no, it's not. Whoa, whose job is it? Oh, it's the C-suite and it's R&D. Mm. Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. But that's what we've communicated. That's the way that we've taught. That's the way that we've socialized people. That is fundamentally wrong. Innovation is embedded in every job description. Every job description. There's only two things we do in organizations. We do execution and we do innovation. That's it. Execution is delivering value today. Innovation is delivering value tomorrow. We may not know how we're going to do it. We got to figure it out. That's why innovation is the figure it out process. But this is all we do. We have these companion disciplines, execution and innovation. Both disciplines are your job. Your job, my job, everybody's job. And so what that means as a practical matter in an organization is that we have a hierarchy. Organizations are hierarchies. Now we try to flatten them out to some extent, but we don't get rid of hierarchy. We never will, because we need a division of labor. We need roles and responsibilities. But what we don't do, for innovation to flourish, we have to circulate local knowledge from the bottom of the organization, from all parts of the organization. We have to circulate local knowledge from the bottom to the top. So this has to be going constantly. If we don't do that, we are doomed to a fate of irrelevance. Why? Because we become willfully blind. The top of the organization in R&D, it will never be sufficient to understand what we need to do as an organization, to be able to innovate, to be able to maintain competitive advantage or mission, or whatever it is that you exist for as an organization. You need everyone in the organization contributing. So this goes back to what you said, Eva. Co-creation, yeah, that's how you co-create. Now, the people at the top of the organization, they are responsible for fundamental vision and direction. That's true. Someone has to do that. Okay, but once we have that, we need to enlist everyone. And it can be a process of co-creation. But there are cultural constraints. This goes back to psychological safety. If psychological safety is not there, there's a barrier to entry. Because I'll give you an example. So let's go back to the distinction between execution and innovation. Execution is about reducing variance. Why? To create efficiency and scale. Okay, but hang on. Over here we have innovation. What does innovation do? It introduces variance by its very nature. But we don't teach people how to do that very well. So this is such an interesting thing. Most leaders, they are taught, and they know how to lead execution. They do not know how to lead innovation. No one ever taught them. They don't know how to do it. So they're really good at one discipline, but not the other. They're half a leader.
And part of that is inciting and nurturing curiosity, right?
Got that right.
Right? Like, have leaders been taught how to do that? So I love when you said like coaching and asking questions. That's really what nurturing that curiosity is all about.
That's right.
There's so many
they don't know how to do that.
There's so many, for those interested in the 4 stages of psychological safety work, the behavior guide is mesmerizing. There are so many behaviors that leaders I've worked with have said, it's actually really easy. This is all stuff that much of this is so relatable. And now I'm realizing it fits into this framework. So it's so approachable. some of that. If people are wondering, well, how do I do this? A lot of this is approachable when we drill into it past conceptual and past the themes of behaviors. We have a peculiar question for you as number 4 for wise humans. I'll just say peculiar. It's the eulogy test question. So how would you like to be remembered after you cross over to the other side?
Wow. Well, it'll have nothing to do with worldly accomplishments or acclaim or any of that. That's not going to matter. It's going to be about relationships and my contribution to the lives of other people. And so first and foremost, I hope that I've been a faithful and true husband to my wife. We're working on it. We're 31 years down the road, just getting started. And then it will be, so that's my first and most important stewardship. Number 2 will be to my children. Have I been a good father? I've certainly made mistakes, but have I been supportive and loving and helpful in their lives on an ongoing basis? And then it will go to humanity beyond that. So concentric circles, right? That's how I want to be remembered. My wife, and then my children, and then humanity. So those concentric circles, and it will be about providing love and support to them and contributing to their lives, but helping them develop their potential. So I don't want to take credit for that, but I hope that I can be a catalyst and a source of support for them. That's really what will matter when they plant me with my fathers. That will be it. All the other things, they melt away. Who cares? Oh, you did this and this and that. It doesn't matter. It'll be meaningless at that point.
I think that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Our last question, because I'm conscious of time. Who are people you most respect who are actively contributing to making humanity better?
I respect people that are motivated to help and support and lift and encourage others, but they don't need the credit. It's not about credit, and it's not about scale. Okay, so let me explain this. I'm impressed with people that help others one by one. You can't, I think in the calculus of heaven, it doesn't matter. Scale's not going to matter. I don't think scale's going to matter. I think if you help one person, it's going to be just as valuable as helping 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. I just don't think it's arithmetic that way. So what I'm impressed with are people that go about their lives quietly and humbly helping, contributing, lifting, and encouraging other people. And they do it without thought of reward or recognition. They do it without acclaim. They do it without any of those things. That's what impresses me. Can I give you an example?
Yes.
There's a woman in our neighborhood, and she just passed away a week ago. And she left some notes. And she left some notes to her neighbors and her friends. And these were notes of love and appreciation to her friends. She was a humble person of no worldly acclaim. Zero. No one knows her outside of her small little circle. But what were her last acts of benevolence? To write these little notes of appreciation to her friends.
Yeah.
And to make sure that her cat was taken care of.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is a hero. This is what it's all about. It's the way that you interact and you treat and you esteem and you value other people. And it is completely detached from title or position or authority or any of the other awards or artifacts that the world might give you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But for many people, it takes them a long time before they can come to a point of security and self-confidence that they can let all that other stuff go. It's kind of the culminating last stage of self-confidence, where it's not about me anymore. Like, I'm not preoccupied with myself. When you get to that point in your life, it's a blessed day. Like, you finally graduated. It's your ultimate graduation. I'm going to do this out of pure motive to help someone. And there's no calculation about what I need out of this transaction, because it's not a transaction. My entire intent is to give and contribute. That is like, you're there.
That's the existential answer, right, Tim? Like, that's the meaning of life. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I'm striving to get to that place.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
I am just delighted, enlightened. There's been a few moments where you've said, this is interesting. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I feel like we could continue for a very long time. You have offered heart, spirit, soul, brain, full presence, so much wisdom that I don't know if you've heard me scribbling away here, but every time I have the gift of reading new content, this conversation, I learn something new that I get to take to impact maybe one other person. So, or maybe more. So thank you so much for being here. And before we sign off, there's a little formality that we like to do. Our last guest, Michael Bungay-Stinier, founder of Box of Crayons and MBS Works, author of the renowned Coaching Habit, he left a question for you, not knowing who we would be connecting with.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'll thank him or not, but.
Well, we'll see. So his question is an interesting one.
Sure.
What do you have to let go of to get to the next place you're getting to?
Yeah. You've got to let go of your insecurities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you do that as you focus on others and stop thinking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's in the very process and the very act of reaching out that you're able to shed that preoccupation as you work on it again and again and again. But that's what I'd like to leave behind, is the insecurities and the preoccupation with self, and move to higher levels of contribution that way.
And you've demonstrated that with us, Tim, by focusing on us, by being on this little podcast. We thank you. What question might you have for our next guest?
For the next guest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, here's a question. So I believe that the best synonym for the concept of leadership, the best synonym, the best word in the English language is the word influence. So here's the question. What is one of the best ways that you can demonstrate or show or provide influence and thus true leadership to others?
Excellent.
Beautiful.
So with that, I think we are a little bit over time. We apologize for that, Tim. We want to thank you really genuinely for taking the time with us. As Eva said, it was very enlightening and humble, and we got a sense of who you are, which is frankly beautiful. So if you want to connect with Tim, go to leaderfactor.com. Stay tuned for episode 18. What else, Eva? Anything else?
Yeah, episode 18. We're not going to say it yet, but it's as you can see, it's going to be someone remarkably wise and making humanity better through leadership and at work. If you want to keep putting the funk back into being human, being a better human in leadership and culture at work, please subscribe to Pithy Musings on our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify. You can share this episode or others you like with friends, family, colleagues. Please do tag us in the shares. When you do, we do a random draw, and you might win a deliciously large Pithy Musings mug. One may be coming your way, Timothy. And you can also find our funk and disco playlist on Spotify. If you have feedback or ideas, we invite them. Write us, Caroline at talktalk.ca, and me, Eva at livewithfervor.com. And until next time, stay pithy
and keep musing. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Wholehearted thank you.